Hi everyone. I wanted to do a video response to Billy Black's low self-esteem video. Now granted, as always, he was going on the humor thing, but also I think Billy Black, you would agree that you use comedy as a tool to communicate to people how you really feel, but in a comedic way, because people tend to listen more, and even though they're laughing, they actually listen better, and they get more of what you're trying to say, and they get your point more. People tend to not be as against listening or put up a wall whenever you use comedy as a way of communication, which is a good thing. I wanted to make a video response instead of just like writing a comment because one, my carpal's acting up quite a bit right now, and I have really bad carpal tunnel, and two, it's just easier to talk than it is to type. So, one of the points that you were talking about in your video was, of course, the main idea, which was, why do kids today have such low self-esteem? Well, I'd have to say that in some ways I unanimously agree with a lot of what you said. A lot of children today, and I can say this and be talking from experience, I have a 10-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old daughter, and a 3-year-old daughter. Yes, I have all girls. And a lot of kids these days are, they put a lot more emphasis on what their parents say. They are coddled quite a bit, and they also tend to be way more impressionable. It used to be that it was, you know, like you were saying, the parents raised their children, children were seen and not heard. It was a whole different era. And in today's society, it's even my own children. If I say one thing to especially my older daughter, who's now getting into the preteen, you know, she's in 5th grade, which here in the state of Mississippi is junior high. And she tends to be very impressionable. Like if I say, you can do that better, or if I get on to her about something, or if I talk to her sternly, she just like cries. It's an automatic thing. And I'm like, what did I say? It doesn't really matter what I do. She's so sensitive to everything that I do, and it makes me so afraid as a parent to say the wrong thing to her, because I'm afraid, like, if I say, that was stupid, she's going to take it like I'm calling her stupid, and by no means do I think that she's stupid. So I think part of it is that kids today are more impressionable, which does tie into low self-esteem, because it makes us as parents, everything that we say, our kids these days almost hold us accountable for everything we say. Whereas it used to be that a parent could tell you, and God forgive me for this, but they could tell you to shut the fuck up, and the kid would just shut up. That's how I was when I grew up. But now if you say that to a kid, they're going to cry and be like, why are you cursing at me? It's a totally different mentality, and kids grow up with that. So it's very hard for a parent, and as a parent, to know what to do. And you end up saying and doing the wrong thing, and then your child grows up with low self-esteem. I also agree, though, that a lot of kids are over-medicated, as well as adults, and that it creates drug-addicted people who end up with more complex psychological issues than the issues they originally started out with, which a lot of times could have been dealt with by that person empowering themselves and changing their own circumstances. I also wanted to touch on another point. This is the reason I keep looking down. I wrote down a few things because your video was 6 minutes, so I was trying to touch on a few points. The other point that you were talking about is kids on sugar. Now, a lot of people might laugh at that and be like, oh, whatever, that's just funny. But it actually is a really good point that you bring up, because I do have children. People think like, oh, you're just saying that. But no, I do have children that are special needs. I have one that has autism, Asperger's, and Asperger's is different than autism, but it is considered a autistic disorder because it falls into the autistic disorder umbrella, I guess the way to put it, because it kind of is a broad spectrum. My 3-year-old. And then my oldest one, my 10-year-old, has a JRA, which is junior rheumatoid arthritis. That happens to be genetic. My father has it. So, not junior, of course, but he has rheumatoid arthritis. And a lot of what affects my oldest daughter also, because she's ADHD, a lot of people think that, and I was even one of those people, that attention deficit hyperactive disorder was something that parents used to medicate their kids because they didn't want to deal with them. Until I actually had a child that was that way, and I saw how the symptoms manifest themselves. She was actually coming home with C's and D's in school. She couldn't focus. Even when I would talk to her, she would just look away from me. Her eyes would be everywhere else. And this is at 8, 9 years old. She wasn't a little baby anymore. She was getting to the point where she should have been able to have some self-control, and she had none. She's on a very low dose of medicine, and I personally feel it was the best decision for her because her grades went up. She's A's and B's now and other things. But going back to diet, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a whim there. It was just diet does tie into these types of disorders. People eat differently. People, I think, now there's a lot more hormones put into our foods. There's a lot more sugar put into our foods. Even milk, regular milk that you buy off the grocery store shelf, has a lot of sugar in it. Everything in the United States that the USDA and other government agencies approve for us to eat has a lot of byproducts in it and things that really and truly should not be in our food. And because our children, from the time that they're small to the time that they're older, are eating this, their bodies have a lot of buildup in it. And that might sound kind of like one of those pseudoscience things, but I am an environmental science major. I have to take a lot of classes about environmental law. I have to review a lot about USDA practices and different government agencies like the EPA practices. And there's a lot that our government lets go by. And there's a lot that American people have in their diet that other countries do not. And thus we have this epidemic of children that are coming out in this generation that have attention problems. They have autism. Autism is another epidemic that has just sort of taken, I say, the world by storm, because when I went to the autism walk in Biloxi, Mississippi here earlier this year for my daughter, there was so many kids. There was even some families that had 2 and 3 children with autism, and the children had different levels of autism. Some of them had PDD, which is like severe autism, which means that the child a lot of times isn't developed correctly, can't, has to wear diapers at like 5 and 6 and things like that. And can't communicate. A lot of them can't talk. And it was just really strange to me, and it was kind of ironic that you mentioned diet. Diet does have a lot to do with depression, psychological issues in the brain, chemicals in the brain, children, the way they behave, the way they act, how long they can pay attention. It does tie in together. So I just wanted to make a video response to you, Billy Black, and tell you I appreciate your videos. I always get a good laugh out of them. And thanks for hitting on some important topics, because even though you kind of went at it at a humorous angle, it is an important topic, and it is something more people need to be aware of, that we don't need to be so coddled, and that we need to let our kids sort of grow up. But at the same time, we need to be aware of how we are talking to our kids and how we are dealing with our kids, because they're a lot more impressionable than they were a generation back. It's just the way it is. So thanks again, and keep doing it. Keep making your videos, Billy Black. Thanks.